Made possible through support from PASCO, Personal Assistance Services of Colorado, the Arc of Aurora, and Developmental Pathways. A THINK+change training.
Hi, I'm Hani Rayleigh with the Arc of Aurora, here today bringing you a THINK+change training on civil rights and discrimination. You'll hear from Jeff and Petrie later on about some of the more specific topics, but I want to talk with you a little bit about a general overview of what rights are in the disability world. We often hear these terms thrown around, and it's important for us to know that our rights are rooted in some specific laws that help to protect us in community settings. You have a right because inherently you are born with rights. You're born with human rights and civil rights that help protect you from infringement and discrimination in community settings, help to protect you based on who you are and your disability type or the language you use or your race or your gender. So knowing that there are specific rights that are given to you just because you are human and you are here is important to know. You also have civil and political rights that help to make sure that you're not discriminated against in political or government settings. Not to be confused by privileges. Privileges are oftentimes looked on as rights, but really they're an entitlement that you have access to based on a class that you might be assigned with or a group that you see yourself affiliated with. Some of the rights that are protected by what's called the ADA, which is the Americans with Disabilities Act. That was passed in 1990. That allows you to have access to environments that you might have, or people with disabilities were restricted access to historically. There are 5 titles of IDA. So you'll often hear in the community that it's a Title II violation of ADA. And I don't want to get too in the weeds with you, but I do want to give you a brief kind of overview of what those titles are, just so that when you hear them, you have a better understanding of where they come from. The first title of ADA is access to employment rights. This allows you in a workplace setting to have access to reasonable accommodations. The second title is protection in state and local government programs. So this means that you should have access to courts. It means you should have access to voting places, which Petrie and Jeff will talk more about, and also access to transportation. Title III of the ADA allows you access to goods and services in nonprofit and for-profit entities. So Title III is where you will probably hear a lot of access to the basic environments, rights that you should be able to enter public settings and not have barriers based on perhaps you utilize a wheelchair or maybe you need additional accommodations to access that environment. This allows service animals to be used in public settings. It makes sure that you have access to public settings. So in 1992, all environments that were already built, so like a public setting, had to kind of retrofit their environment to allow people with disabilities to be able to have access to them. This doesn't mean that they had to tear down their entry location or build a ramp, but if there was an easy way to make an environment accessible, you are required to do so. And any new buildings built after 2010 had to follow the ADA standards. Title IV is an ADA title that makes sure that telecommunications are accessible to people with disabilities. So this means that your landline has telephone relay services built in so that that's not an exclusive service to folks that are able to use it without accommodation. And Title V really kind of offers other provisions. So it coordinates the ADA with the Rehabilitation Act and makes sure that there's kind of some enforcement requirements that are built into it as well. If you feel like your ADA rights are being violated, you would want to either connect with a ADA center that's local to your community. I know in Colorado we have the Rocky Mountain ADA Center as well as other statewide independent living centers that can help you to better understand your ADA rights and make sure they're enforced. But nationally, you can always refer to the Department of Justice that can help you in filing a complaint regarding your ADA rights if you feel like they're being violated. Another detail that you should ground yourself in is a Supreme Court decision that was offered in 1999 in regards to Olmstead. Olmstead allows people to live in the community settings. It deters our state and government services from unduly making people live in institutionalized settings. It helps people to be protected against what used to be considered like warehousing or institutionalization, and really is kind of the foundation to community living and community living services. There is a support in Colorado called the Community Choice Transitions Waiver that helps people that if they're still feeling like they are stuck in a nursing home or institution-like setting, helps people transition out of those settings. If you ever feel like or know someone that is trapped, let's say, in a institution or in a setting that is not community-like or is not of their choice, you have a couple different remedies. You can connect with the Office of Civil Rights here in Colorado. They'll help you file a complaint. They'll also really try to track kind of what's going on statewide regarding Olmstead rights. You could also connect with Disability Law Colorado. They are a funded program to support individuals in the community settings. And ultimately, the Department of Health and Human Services is kind of that overall regulatory agency that can help with filing any complaints or if you feel like your rights are being violated in a community setting. Olmstead really reinforces that community living standard that we've grown to know and love. But it probably isn't surprising to you that some systems still need a push towards making sure that those community living rights are being addressed and are fully implemented for folks. Another right that you might have access to as a person with a disability is found under IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. In 1975, this was passed. It allows people with disabilities to have access to a free and appropriate public education in the least restrictive setting. So no longer are there no options for kids with disabilities to attend with their public school peers. Their neighborhood school is now an option for them, where prior to 1975, kiddos may not have had access to a public school setting at all, or it might have looked very, very different from what it looks like now. The reason we bring up this topic is because rights are different than your privilege. They're different than what maybe you expect your rights to be, and using some of the decisions and laws that are built in place to provide kind of the foundation of your advocacy efforts are important if ever you feel like they're being violated, or if you're not too sure if they're being violated, it's a place to check. So stay tuned for Jeff and Petrie's series on kind of digging in a little bit deeper to some of these topics. We're thankful to have you here, and we know that when you know your rights, you have a better idea of how you can feel more comfortable in a community setting and really kind of start to expand your life and the way you engage with others. Take care.